Well, we're moving on to the next leg of our discussion this morning, and we're talking about the new levies, some of those that have been introduced. We've heard of levies here, levies there, levies everywhere. Some were saying that we shouldn't tax or introduce any new taxes in the 2021 budget, but lo and behold, we have them there. Joining us to discuss some of these levies, some of these taxes, and what the way forward is, we're joined by Atta Ahen. He is chairman of CONIWAS, and we also have Dr. Ebu Turkson, economist with the University of Ghana. But we're starting with Atta Ahen for now. Mr. Ahen, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us on the AM show. Okay, so we're going to try to connect, ensure that we have Mr. Atta Ahen. In the meantime, maybe we'll bring you some snippets, in case you missed it, of some of the levies that we've actually had introduced in recent times. Mr. Ahen? Hello, good morning, Mr. Ahen.
Yeah, good morning.
It's a pleasure having you join us this morning for this discussion.
Same here.
Right. So let's start from your appreciation generally of the 2021 budget statement. I'm sure you've heard of all the levies that have been introduced that are going to affect the ESLA itself as far as how much we pay. It's going to affect fuel prices. It's going to affect how much we pay in terms of the NHI levy and all of that. From a general standpoint, how would you, say you felt about the 2021 budget statement?
Yes, thank you very much. I think that, like any other Ghanaian, we would have expected that there won't be any additional taxes, especially given the situation we find ourselves in, the complications of the COVID-19 pandemic and all that, the general hardships that Ghanaians are feeling. We felt that, if you impose additional taxes, especially on petroleum products, the multiplier effects on all other sectors will be obvious, and the general difficulties on the average Ghanaian. But I believe that these are perhaps necessary evils to take us out of the difficulties we find ourselves. And that is why we need to brace ourselves for this. If these are the sacrifices that we have to make in order to improve upon the situation.
Right. And so even before we delve into some matters related to water, related to sanitation, because that is one of the levies that has been introduced, I just want you to expatiate further on the point you just made with regard to some sacrifices that ought to be made. Before the delivery of the budget statement, there had been economists who had said that, and a number of them who had said, no new taxes on the back of COVID-19, on the back of the banking sector collapse, on the back of the number of jobs that have been lost. But a few others also said that if new taxes are introduced, we just might need them to come out of COVID-19. So from where you sit, I just want to, pin you back on the budget. From where you sit, consolidation, completion, continuation. Would you say that per the budget you heard, we are making strides, or these levies we've introduced will help us make strides in consolidating whatever gains we've made, in completing and continuing to restore our national life?
Yes, I think that they are expected to help us to make the strides in consolidating the gains that we have made. But, given the fact that a number of taxes have been imposed at this time, when nobody really expected, for me, it tells you the kind of difficulties we find ourselves in. Of course, politicians will always not tell you the actual picture, but you and I know that there are some difficulties, and maybe if these are not imposed, the consequences may be dire, and maybe these are necessary evils. That is what I think. Otherwise, I do not see why at this time these taxes will be imposed.
Right. And so you say this is a necessary evil, or these are necessary evils. But let me just get you reflecting a bit on last year and what the minister then for sanitation and water resources had been telling us. At different times, we were even told that the capital city, as had been promised by His Excellency the President, to make it the cleanest city in Africa, that we're 80% on course. What would be your reflection on the state of sanitation, especially here in the capital, but broadly, generally across Ghana currently?
Frankly speaking, I think that we have a long way to go, a very long way to go. Our city is nowhere near becoming the cleanest city, even in West Africa. Not to talk about Africa. The filth is everywhere. Even in the capital city, people are still practicing open defecation. People are throwing garbage around. Generally, we have 22% of Ghana's population practicing open defecation today. Only 21% of Ghana's population has access to improved sanitation. 30% of our public basic schools do not have any toilet facility at all. Approximately 70% of the solid waste, and particularly in Accra, is effectively managed through door-to-door collection and municipal arrangements. Ghana generates about 5 million tons of solid waste, 1 million of which is plastic waste. Unfortunately, only about 2% of this plastic waste is recycled. I don't think this picture tells us of any country that is getting closer to becoming the cleanest city in Africa. And so I think that we need to go to the drawing board. We need to engage all stakeholders, develop the appropriate strategy to be able to reach this destination, if that is where we want to go. Because we need to do a number of things. Ensure that there is sustained, comprehensive public education, increased financing, develop infrastructure, law enforcement, and all that. These are things that we need to do. And I think we should concentrate on the job rather than count our achievements.
Right. So you wouldn't, obviously, from what you're saying, peg it at 80% in terms of cleanliness. But if you had to guesstimate, if you had to, make a projection based on what you know, based on the statistics you've just given, how clean would you say the capital is? Even before we get to monetary matters and the relevance of this levy, how clean in percentage terms?
The difficulty will come from the fact that we do not have any blueprint for this. There's no strategy. So I do not have any basis to be able to rate. So if I'm saying that we may not be at 80, it will be difficult for me to now bring out the facts to support this assertion. But I do not think that we are anywhere near that. But I don't want to hazard any guess. We will have to go to the drawing board. We will have to discuss, develop the indicators, and then when we are tracking, all of us will know where we are.
Now, when the caretaker finance minister was actually reading the 2021 budget statement, he spoke about that now famous, or in some circles, infamous 10 peswa sanitation and pollution levy, which will be incorporated into the proposed fuel levy. And he said this new rate would be charged on the price per litre of petrol or diesel under the Energy Sector Levies Act, or ESLA. We'll talk about some of the other benefits supposed to be accrued by the implementation of this levy. But the question is this what we need at this point in time? We've been grappling with something like open defecation, which costs us many, many hundreds of millions every year. We've not even been able to deal with that. This levy that is going to be placed on the ordinary Ghanaian, is that the solution we need?
Well, let me tell you that as a citizen, I have already said that it is not something that I will have thought that it will be introduced. But as a sector practitioner who knows too well the difficulties in the sector, I think this may be a necessary evil. Look, we have very low levels of financing for improved sanitation in Ghana, very low levels. In fact, the GOG budgetary allocation for sanitation services delivery has consistently been low and barely caters for salaries and benefits and perhaps goods and services, with virtually nothing for capital expenditure to be able to develop the kind of infrastructure we want to develop. At the Itequini Declaration by African countries, where they committed to a 0.5% of GDP for sanitation and hygiene, this has never happened. We have never been able to achieve this. And there's already a very huge gap in terms of infrastructure financing. This funding stream may be a dedicated one, and which may help. It may be a good response to the long years of calling on government to find solutions to the challenges of sustainable financing for environmental sanitation. Apart from the low levels of financing, you have talked about the cost of poor sanitation. Poor sanitation costs Ghana a whooping $290 million every year, plus an additional $79 million from open defecation alone. And if we can sacrifice and invest a little more to be able to deal with this, I think that eventually we'll be making some savings. The inconsistent implementation on the field that we have always talked about has always been as a result of the weak financial inflows into the sanitation subsector. And it's because the budgetary allocation is discretionary. And so when a sector is prioritized, they get more. If it's not prioritized, they get very little. And once you get that little, there is no way you can get out of the difficulties that you find yourself. So for me, I think that we need a dedicated source of funding. And if this is going to be a dedicated source, then I think it can help us. The only thing is that we need to keep our eyes on the ball so that this also doesn't turn out to be like the plastic waste recycling fund, which was passed somewhere 2010, 2011 by Parliament. Until date, no disbursement has been made. I mean, I think that we need to ensure effective management of the fund to ensure that it goes to the right areas that it has been earmarked for.
Right. Mr. Ahin, stay with me as I put two things side by side for you. Now, on the issue of road tolls, for example, not too long ago, I was on the Accra-Tema stretch, and how much we accrue per year from even one such toll area is quite a bit of money. Back then, the question people, were asking had to do with what we had done in the past with what we had accrued. Now, based on what the caretaker finance minister said, he speaks about improving urban air quality, and if I may cite him here, combating air pollution, re-engineering landfill sites at Pong and Oti, supporting fumigation of public schools, among others, constructing more sustainable state-of-the-art waste treatment plants. He also talks about constructing waste and compost plants across the country. There are many promises that have been made on the back of taxing the ordinary Ghanaian or levying, some 10 pesos per person, depending on what the person is doing at a specific point in time. Now, the question then would be, do you foresee, from what you know, that this will suffice to achieve all of these things, this basket of things that is being mentioned on the sanitation and water resources front?
And I like the point you made, the analogy you made with the road toll. You see, sometimes the difficulty for Ghanaians is not about the amount they pay. It is about how the amount they pay is effectively utilized to address the challenges that we list. So, for example, these are fantastic areas that we need to address. I mean, if you have been to any of the landfill sites, I mean, you will weep. Even the 4 that we classify as engineered landfill sites are very poorly managed and can barely, qualify for an engineered landfill site. They need to be improved upon. We need to, reconstruct the poorly managed landfill facilities. We need to construct state-of-the-art waste treatment plants. We need all this because this is the way to go. In the 21st century, people have said that it is a waste to waste waste. Waste can be a good resource, and therefore we can't just waste it. We can recycle and make them productive. But if the fund is going to be applied strictly to these areas, then we think that we are going to get some very positive results out of this. The challenge has always been to monitor and track to ensure that the fund is indeed applied to these areas. If we don't track, if we don't monitor, if we don't focus our eyes on this, we may not be able to achieve half of what this fund has been earmarked for.
And permit me to just chip in this, Mr. Ahin. How would you suggest we do that? Usually, when you leave this monitoring, we've even had a ministry for that, monitoring, evaluation, and all of that.
Sure.
When you leave this to the same parastatal agencies or governmental agencies, they tell us the execution is good, your money has been used, put to prudent use. But sometimes, even from the layman's point of view, you know better. So the question then is, what do we do? Do we need more civil society organizations to target this? Do we need a ministry specifically to do that? What do we need to ensure that there is value for our money? Because the levy has been imposed anyway.
Fantastic point. I think that is the job that we expected the Ministry of Monitoring and Evaluation to do. And being a state agency, we thought that they will be clothed with adequate capacity to be able to ensure accountability of various ministries. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear that this has happened. Going forward, I think that apart from that Ministry of Monitoring and Evaluation, we need to strengthen civil society. Because, look, civil society can be very powerful if their activities are supported. And so we need to strengthen civil society to continually keep their eyes on the ball, ensure accountability, ensure that they advocate improved services. Otherwise, if we leave it to government alone, like you said, it will be difficult for us to achieve the kind of accountability that we seek.
Okay. Before we proceed from here with the very next point I want to make, and I'm going to make it lest I forget, but let me just acknowledge that we've been joined by Dr. Ebo Turkson, economist at the University of Ghana. Dr. Turkson, a very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, and good morning to your viewers.
Great. I'll be coming to you shortly, but my final bit to you for this batch of questions, Mr. Ahin. So beyond the levies, beyond the taxes, beyond what we can get in monetary terms, what else do you feel? You've spoken about not wasting waste, because that's how the world is headed now. If we keep wasting waste, we'll destroy our planet. What else do you feel ought to be done by government, by ordinary people, to ensure that the targets that have been set are actually met? In the past, we've had the town councils, or the tankasi, like we used to call them. They did their work. Today, we have a different system. What do you feel are the chinks in the armor of the system? What should we tweak to get to a proper sanitation level in not just Accra, but the entire country?
Well, I believe that I have mentioned a few of them already.
Yes, you have.
The most important thing for, sanitation has to do with behavior change. So if you are unable to change the behavior of the citizens, no matter how much funds you put in, no matter how much effort, you may not be able to get the desired results. And so, number one, we need to ensure an effective, comprehensive, sustained public education program. We don't have that. And if you are unable to carry your citizens along in the programs and plans that you have to address the sanitation challenges, it will be very difficult. So the mindset of the people will have to change. But of course, we recognize that it takes time for you to change mindsets. And that is why law enforcement is another option. Elsewhere, people will want to do what they want. But because the law is effective, they will dare not, even venture. And therefore, we need to also enforce our laws. The bylaws are there. All the metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies have developed very fantastic bylaws. We need to enforce them and stop these political, social, religious interferences in the work of the environmental health and sanitation officers. If we're able to do that, we'll go far. apart from the infrastructure development and all the other things that come with it, we need to ensure that we prioritize the business of sanitation and waste management in this country and make it a fulcrum around which development will revolve, because it has multiple effects, impact on other sectors of the economy, particularly tourism. Currently, tourism has gone down because, many people want to go and see places that are clean. And if they don't consider your country a clean place, they will not come here. So I think that we need to do some of these things and do them in a comprehensive manner and in a sustained manner. That way, we will begin to see the results.
Well, Mr. Atahin, it's been refreshing, sharing thoughts with you. It would also imply that we should be willing to get arrested, for example, when we flout the sanitation law.
Oh, yes. I agree with you.
Right. Well, let's see how things go as we keep pushing. Even as our taxes are taken, we keep pushing for accountability. Mr. Atahin, thank you very much, and do have a good day. He is chairman of Kwani